And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. This outlook is for the midweek period Wednesday and Thursday. And of note, as we go through this Tuesday and Wednesday, a weak area of low pressure in the Gulf is going to continue southeastward. It'll weaken, but as we get into Wednesday night, especially during the day, I should say Thursday, we're going to see moisture come up along Western Canada, British Columbia, and be pulled in across parts of the Panhandle, which will enhance the chance of some additional showers, maybe even isolated thunder. Back to the west, a broad south-southwest flow of warmer air coming in from the North Pacific across the Aleutians up over the cooler waters of the Bering. So we have widespread IFR conditions there Wednesday morning from the Chukchi Bering Strait all the way down through the Bering into the Aleutians. There'll be one area of low pressure here, not especially strong, and then another one coming up out of the North Pacific to keep this moisture in a frontal system that'll eventually push in some rain and rain showers along the southwest west coast. For Wednesday afternoon with the daytime heating, there could be some isolated thunderstorms, 40-mile Gold Country, upper half the Tanana Valley, Talkeetna Mountains on over toward Wrangell St. Elias Mountains as well. Generally fairer skies, though, for much of south central up into the interior with warming temperatures. A number of spots could see their first 70-degree readings, such as Anchorage. Further north, 80-degree weather not out of the question here as we go through the latter half of this week. Thursday morning, generally VFR conditions across much of the mainland. We could see some areas of IFR, intercoastal mountains of the inner panhandle here around Hyder, Wrangell toward Petersburg. And again, as we get into Thursday afternoon and evening, some moisture is going to kind of come in from more of the southeast and east into the panhandle as this weakening area of low pressure slides out over the southeastern Gulf. Meanwhile, widespread IFR conditions, Chukchi, Bering Strait, all across the Bering and into the Aleutians with that broad south-southwest flow. And Thursday afternoon, once again, there could be some isolated thunderstorms pop up around the 40-mile Gold Country, upper half the Tanana Valley, south of the Alaska Range, Talkeetna Mountains, again toward Wrangell St. Elias Mountains as well. And we find IFR conditions with a frontal system here out over the eastern Bering that'll be trying to push up into the southwest coast, YK deltas, as we get into Thursday night and Friday. But in the meantime, VFR conditions are expected there across the Brooks Range for Wednesday, including Anaktuvik and Adigan passes. As we go south, also VFR conditions on the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Maryland as we round up Rainy Pass in the Central Alaska Range, Windy Pass VFR, though there could be an isolated thunderstorm or two popping up out over the Talkeetna Mountains as you go fly southeastward. And also in the vicinity of Isabel Pass, we could see a scattered shower, isolated thunderstorm develop there as we go through Wednesday afternoon, early evening. Mentasta Pass, the same thing. Potential for cumulus buildups and a few isolated showers and storms. Tanita Pass, also an isolated thunderstorm possible along the higher terrain. Wednesday with VFR conditions. Portage Pass, a little more stable, generally VFR conditions there. And out over the north end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White, and much of the Panhandle, Wednesday we'll see VFR conditions. Freezing levels at the surface are confined up into the highest elevations of the mountains and off of the Beaufort Sea coast there, along and north of places like Dead Horse and Kaktovik. Freezing levels aloft a little lower here out over the Gulf because of that weak low pressure system. Around and below 4,000 feet. They come upwards 10,000 feet as we get down along the British Columbia coast toward Vancouver Island, and then out here to the west in the Aleutians, there's area of low pressure out here. Notice freezing levels come up 10,000 feet, so there is, with that broad south-southwest flow, that warmer air coming in up over the cooler waters of the Bering Sea will create IFR conditions with lower cloudiness, lower ceilings, and potentially some areas of low stratus and fog. And then for icing, where there is some precipitation and thicker cloud cover, we could find along the west coast some areas where there might be some moderate icing, Lisburn Peninsula, and then down toward the lower Yukon, Kuskokwim Bay, above 8,000 and 10,000 feet there north of the central Aleutians. Winds at jet stream level, 30,000 feet. You see that circulation of the low that's out over the Gulf. It's heading east-southeastward and weakening. Not a lot of wind across the mainland. Back out here toward the west, we find across the lower Bering and in through the Aleutians, there is a band of some stronger winds aloft up over 75 to 85 knots. You can see the low circulation there at 300 millibars. At 700 millibars, 9,000 feet. Again, the most notable winds are up here in the Chukchi Sea, eastern Russia, at 35 to as high as 55 knots out over the Chukchi Sea, and then back out here through the Aleutians. Winds 35 to 45 knots out of the west-southwest, and then here's that circulation of the low in the Gulf, but the wind field at mid-levels is near 30-35 knots, but mainly south and southwest of the center. At 3,000 feet, the low here in the Gulf, not really reflecting any significant winds, maybe some 30-knot winds along the British Columbia coast out of the northwest. Otherwise, we have ridging, so we expect lighter winds not just at the surface, but aloft across south central, up through the central eastern interior, all the way to the Brooks Range. And this is what's going to allow for the warming afternoon temperatures throughout the rest of this week. As I said, a number of spots are going to see their first 70-degree temperatures in south central, and even first 80-degree readings up here in the central, east central interior, and along the west coast, all the way down to the Aleutians with that low out there. It's just creating a broad south-southwesterly flow with strongest winds over the Chukchi Sea, Lisbon Peninsula, up to 45 knots. And as we come on down into the central Aleutians, winds 30-35 knots there. So the greatest threat of turbulence on Wednesday will be along areas of the west coast, the Lisbon Peninsula, Cape Lisbon, Point Hope, as well as the west part of the Seward Peninsula, including St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew, all the way down to St. Paul, surface to 4,000 feet, and then an area especially central to near western Aleutians. Expect some turbulence, moderate turbulence, surface to 4,000 feet on Wednesday.